Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into this because wow, what a match. A heavily favored Argentina literally barely survived what was honestly a shocking challenge from Cabo Verde. I mean, this was an absolute roller coaster of a game that had everybody on the edge of their seats for the full 120 minutes. We all thought this was going to be a standard knockout stage progression, right? But instead, it turned into this heart-stopping tactical battle that completely exposed some really deep vulnerabilities in the Argentine squad. So today, we're going to break down exactly what happened out there on the pitch, using the tactics and the data to figure out how a massive upset almost became reality. And you know, right out of the gate, Lionel Messi's post-match press conference completely shatters this illusion that Argentina just walked onto the pitch expecting an easy win. Listen to this quote. They knew this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. The initial game plan, of course, was to score early, control the tempo, maybe grab a second goal. But as Messi admitted, everything went in the exact opposite direction. They fully recognized that against a team fighting for their absolute survival, your reputation or having a famous name on your jersey, that's simply not going to cut it.
So there was this massive disconnect between what the public expected and what actually happened. Fans and analysts had been calling this an easy pathway for Argentina. But man, what we actually witnessed was a grueling, physically demanding dogfight. Honestly, it felt way more like a high-stakes semifinal. It just goes to show there is absolutely no such thing as an easy pathway in knockout football. Cabo Verde didn't just sit back and take it. They went toe-to-toe fighting for their spot on the global stage and completely shredded that old narrative that smaller nations are just going to roll over for the giants.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, Masterclass by the Underdogs, Cabo Verde.
So to truly get a handle on this match, we really have to talk about Cabo Verde's manager, Bubista. He set up this giant puzzle for the Argentine midfield by strictly maintaining a 4-5-1 narrow block. See, Argentina thrives on central progression. They love those quick little combinations right through the middle. Well, Cabo Verde knew this, so they just packed the center of the pitch, stayed incredibly disciplined in their defensive lines, and totally neutralized those central attacks. They essentially forced Argentina to play a wide game, which, to be honest, they just weren't comfortable doing.
And then there's this number, 7.7. You know, it takes a truly monumental individual performance to earn a staggering 7.7 match rating when your team actually concedes 3 goals. But that is exactly what Cabo Verde's goalkeeper, Vozinha, pulled off.
Vozinha was literally a brick wall out there. He made 5 massive saves throughout the match. At one point, he completely denied an incredibly dangerous Lionel Messi free kick, a shot that absolutely had goal written all over it. Without Vozinha stepping up like a total hero, we could have easily been looking at a Messi hat-trick. He was basically the anchor that allowed Cabo Verde's whole tactical plan to hold out as long as it did, keeping hope alive right until the final whistle.
Which brings us to Part 2, the one-man army, Lionel Messi.
This match demanded an absolutely extraordinary effort from the captain. I mean, at 39 years old, when most guys are already long retired, Messi wasn't just out there scoring his 7th goal of the tournament. He was the entire engine of the team. He provided a brilliant assist, he was controlling the play, constantly creating chances, and executing dribbles. But the craziest part, because of those tactical struggles we just talked about, he frequently had to drop super deep. He was almost playing as the last man at times, just to get on the ball and keep Argentina's tournament hopes alive.
So here is the harsh reality. This was the ultimate carry job. It's super easy to just praise Messi's brilliance, but we have to recognize that his monumental effort was actively masking some very deep, very concerning systemic issues within the Argentine setup. Seriously, if you remove Messi's individual magic from this specific match, Argentina goes home. It really is that simple.
And that leads us perfectly into Part 3, Argentina's tactical nightmares.
Let's break down where things actually fell apart, because these systemic issues build into a tactical nightmare that almost sent the favorites packing. Failures were popping up all over the pitch. The central midfield was just plagued by sloppy forced passes, totally failing to crack that 4-5-1 block. Over on the left, Medina was solid defensively, sure, but he didn't offer that dynamic attacking threat they needed to stretch the pitch. In the final third, McAllister was really struggling with his timing and tackling. But the most glaring issue? The right flank. It was a complete defensive collapse. Molina was constantly left isolated and just kept getting beaten in one-on-one situations, leaving massive holes for Cabo Verde to exploit.
And a lot of this stems from one huge structural flaw. Since Argentina doesn't really play with natural wide wingers, they rely entirely on their fullbacks to provide that width. But in this match, Cabo Verde smartly pinned those fullbacks down. With no natural wingers to bypass the block and the fullbacks totally stuck, Argentina's offense just choked. They literally had no way to stretch the defense laterally.
And that structural flaw bled right into their biggest weakness on the day, defensive transitions.
Argentina's recovery after losing the ball was incredibly sluggish. Because they were constantly forcing plays through the middle and losing possession, Cabo Verde was able to rapidly bypass the counterpress, overload those wings, and easily walk right into zone 14, that super critical space right at the top of the penalty box, to just take clear shots.
Okay, moving on to part 4, the warning sign and the fix.
Look, surviving a scare of this magnitude is a massive, blinking red warning sign, and manager Lionel Scaloni absolutely cannot brush this off. The fix, though, is actually in their own recent history. Argentina needs to channel their 2021 Copa America form. The real strength of that championship team wasn't just their attack. It was a rigid, unbreakable defensive foundation. Right now, they're relying way too heavily on counterpressing in the final third, and when that fails, they're left entirely exposed. They've got to get back to being a defensively formidable, unified bloc.
So, Scaloni's roadmap is clear, but he's got to take concrete steps. Step 1, fix those defensive transitions immediately. Step 2, stop the bleeding on that collapsing right side. Bringing in an extra, rock-solid defender like Otamendi or Palacios is pretty much non-negotiable at this point. And Step 3, he needs to introduce a natural winger. Getting someone like Giuliano Simeone out there would provide actual width, stretch the opposing defense, and finally create the passing angles that the midfield so desperately needs.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the road ahead, Egypt.
They need to get these fixes implemented literally overnight because there is zero time to rest. Up next is Egypt, and man, they are exactly the type of highly dangerous, fast-paced team perfectly built to punish the exact mistakes Argentina just made. Egypt specializes in high-paced transitional play, with Ashwour driving forcefully through the midfield and explosive guys like Omar Marmoush and Zizou attacking those wide areas. They are lethal. If Argentina defends those wide-open spaces and isolated flanks the way they just did against Cabo Verde, Egypt is going to exploit them ruthlessly.
So, I'm going to leave you with this to think about. Lionel Messi pulled off an absolute miracle today to buy his team a little more time in this tournament. But is one man's brilliance really enough to mask a broken system? Can Scaloni fix these glaring defensive nightmares before Egypt takes the pitch and potentially ends their World Cup dream for good? Let's see how this tactical drama unfolds in the next round. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.